Okay, so welcome back. Now, a while ago, we talked about networking in Windows, and we talked about things like visibility of your computers on the network, and file and printer sharing, and password protected sharing. And we stepped through the fairly complicated procedures you need to go through to set up password protected sharing so you can share files and folders. As you see here, you've got a local area network, and we've got a bunch of computers, and you probably want to back up files and folders on different computers. And we showed you how to go through the process of doing that. And we talked about how you had to make sure things like you set up network discovery and file and printer sharing on Windows on every computer on the network. And we also talked about how you also need to be able to see those computers in File Explorer. As you see here, we're in File Explorer, we click on Network. In order to see any computers that are turned on connected to the network and set up with network visibility, you need to make sure that there are a couple services running. And again, that can get kind of complicated because it's fairly unreliable. Sometimes they're running, sometimes they're not. And if it's not running, you're not going to see the computer in File Explorer. So we went through and we talked about how to step through all those different procedures to help you to make sure you've got file and printer sharing on and network visibility on. But at the end of the day, we also said there is a characteristic of Windows, and it's true with Windows 10, also Windows 11 I've noticed, and it's been that case with Windows for as long as I can remember, that often, even though you've got that all set up correctly, you might go in File Explorer and some of the computers that are all set up and running don't appear here in File Explorer, which makes it kind of annoying because, if you want to drag and drop files into the computer or you want to back up files to a remote computer on the network, you can't see it. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to talk about one method that I use that I found to be almost 100% reliable to make sure that computers show up in File Explorer. And one of the issues that I've found is the most important is these two services that run in the background. When you set up network discovery in Windows, it causes these two services, FTP host and FTResPub, resource publications and provider host. Those two services should be running in order for your computer to be visible on the network. But also, I've found that it's not just a matter of getting those services running. Sometimes what you have to do is you have to, if they're both running, shut them down and then restart them both in order for your computer to show up. And we showed a C# application we developed that will turn these manually. You can turn them on or off. But what we're going to show in this video is how you can write a very short, like a 10 or 15 lines of code, C# console application that will go through, and for every computer on your network, it will automatically search out these services on that computer. If they're running, it will shut it off. It will wait a while and then turn it back on. And often that's what's really needed to make sure that your computer is visible on the network. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, develop a little executable, and we're going to take that simple executable and copy it to each of these computers on the network that we want to be visible in File Explorer. And we're going to have a little executable, and we talked previously about Task Scheduler, and that's a great built-in application in Windows that allows you to run an application whenever you want. And we're going to use Task Scheduler on each of these computers to run that console application when you start up the computer. You can set it up so that when the computer starts up, when everything's set to go, it will run that executable, and the executable will search out those two services on each computer, and it will shut them off and turn them back on, and that will hopefully help to make sure that all the computers are visible on the network. So let's take a look at the simple C# Visual Studio console application we can develop, and then we'll be able to copy it to each computer and run it on startup. So here we are in C# Visual Studio console application, And this is the entire code that we're going to use to develop an executable that we will then copy to each LAN computer and run it on startup. And you can see we're using the system.serviceProcess. We have our static void main, and we are going to first define the service that we want to address on the local computer. As we said before, it's going to be the FTP host and FDRES pub, or provider host and resource publication. So we're going to define a service controller called service host, which is the FTP host, and service res pub, which is FDRES pub. And we're also going to define a maximum time allowed to receive a response from a service after initiating a start or stop command. So what we're going to do in this application, we're going to say, hey, if this FTP host is running, what we're going to do is we're going to shut it off and wait this time span. We're going to allow 5 seconds, wait for it to shut off. So if this FTP host is running, we're going to stop it, and service host wait for status. We're going to wait to get a status back from that service controller host.stopped, and we're going to give it 5 seconds. So we're going to wait 5 seconds for it to stop. And then these two services are linked. So all we have to do is we have to stop the FTP host. That will automatically stop the FDRES pub, a resource publication. And then after the 5 seconds, we can go, if that FDRES pub is stopped, then we are going to start it and then wait 5 seconds to get a status to show that it's running. So at the end of this, we should have successfully stopped both services and then restarted them. And since they're linked together, we only have to do this one. And after the 10 seconds or so, this will have successfully restarted. And my experience has been that this is all you need to be fairly consistent, that this will now make sure that the computer, the network computer, is visible in File Explorer. So again, all we have to do is we have to start this and do a release and get the executable and copy that to all of the network computers. And then we just have to go into the task scheduler built into Windows. So here we are in Task Scheduler. I'm not going to go through the details on this. I already did a video on how to set up tasks in Task Scheduler. But what you need to do is you need to reference that executable that you copied over. And then for the task, you go to the trigger, and you can set a trigger on System Startup. So you set it to System Startup, and it will go through and it will run that executable every time it starts up the computer. After all the services and processes are set up and running, it will run that executable, which will go through and restart those two services. So that's about it for this one. We'll see you at the next video. Thanks.